Hello and welcome to another episode of Around the Valley. This is our week 4 recap. We're focusing on football as we go. We will have a volleyball around the valley coming up for you soon. Stay tuned for that. That is one I'm actually excited about bringing you. But let's get going. Joining me as always is Kenny Hodges. Kenny, how you doing?
And I am great as always when we get to get on this podcast and talk about what's going on around the San Fernando Valley. We've got teams playing games all over the place. We got multiple sports that we're covering, and we're going to get to all of those. But right now, we are focusing on the football scene. Coming out of week 4, there was lots of things to talk about. The East Valley League got rolling. We starting to see the Valley Mission League got rolling. We got some stories that are sort of developing there. We got some teams that lost their O's, but there's more story to kind of dig into with those games and what's going on with some of those teams in the Valley Mission as Kennedy is kind of settling in at the top. But without further ado, let's go right into the week 4 scoreboard final, starting in the East Valley. Poly went on the road to Fulton. George Flores had 283 yards passing and 3 touchdowns, kind of showing off that Poly pass game and the improvements they've been making week to week as they beat Fulton 36-0 on the road. Poly picking up their first win on the season. Over to Grant, our leader, coming off of their bye. The 383 yards rushing on the ground combined for our leader as they take the 41-12 victory on the road to get back to 2-2. Moving over to Chavez. Verdugo goes on the road, picks up their first win of the year, 12-8, and a low-scoring fist fight against the Chavez Eagles. Aiden Mejia had 131 all-purpose yards for Verdugo Hills as they get on the board with their first W. Moving over to North Hollywood. Statement game for North Hollywood. We talked about Monroe looking like a team that wanted to challenge for the East Valley. North Hollywood said, not on our watch. We are the champs, and we are ready to turn things around this season. 7 ball carries combined for 375 rushing yards as North Hollywood puts a 54-zip win on Monroe to pick up their first win of the year. Headed over to the Valley Mission, those finals. Canoga, young upstart Canoga team, they went on the road to Panorama. They put up a valiant fight. A late touchdown, and Panorama takes that one 20-14 to improve to 3-2. Over at El Camino, Palisades, a big one. They had hosting Palisades. Jack Thomas, the senior quarterback for Palisades, put on the show through the air, 310 yards passing, including 93-yarder to King Demetrius as they come into Elko and they win 35-18 to remain unbeaten, and Elko falls to 2-3 on the season. Van Nuys went on the road to Kennedy, another big one that we were intrigued about to see what would happen. Van Nuys went into the game 4-0. They are now 4-1 as Kennedy handles business at home. Diego Montez puts on the show as usual with 3 passing touchdowns in the 40-10 victory over the Wolves. Over at Chatsworth High School, Sylmar goes on the road. It was actually a really good game. This was a game I watched closely. It was back and forth. It was nip and tuck until the fourth quarter when Sylmar put a couple scores up to take the game 29-15. Tim Tanner and Releo Reyes combined for 295 yards rushing for give Sylmar the victory. They improved to 3-1 and look like a threat in the Valley Mission. Over at Taft, Eagle Rock comes in. It was actually, you know what? It was a pretty entertaining game, a shootout between the two quarterbacks. Leo passed into the senior quarterback for Eagle Rock. He put up 300 yards and 5 TDs. Nathan Swinson had 245 and 3 TDs of his own for Taft in a losing effort. They go down 56-21, and they fall for the first time this year, fall to 4-1. Over in Fairfax, Granada Hills went on the road, did what they normally do. Their quartet of runners put up 375 on the ground as they take the win over Fairfax, 35-25 to improve to 2-3 on the year. Over at Birmingham, they took on Calabasas team. The Hardy brothers went off as we know they to do. If you're familiar with that Calabasas program, the Hardy brothers, Dominic Hardy, the quarterback, had 300 yards, 3 TDs. His older brother, his senior wide receiver, Desmond Hardy, had 11 catches for 136 and 2 TDs. As they beat Birmingham 49-28. Birmingham falls to 1-3 on the year, but as we know, with Birmingham, the real season starts now when they get back into the city. But at last but not least, Reseda went on the road to San Fernando. San Fernando does what they've been doing this year as they pick the victory 54-6 over rebuilding Reseda. Better days to come for Reseda, but they're struggling through it now. San Fernando improves to 4-1, and that is the week 4 scoreboard final. So coming out of week 4, we had some things develop. We had our eye on Taft and Van Nuys. They were the only unbeatens in the Valley that still remain. They both go down. But give me your thoughts. What is the biggest takeaway for you coming out of week 4 with the action we saw around the San Fernando Valley?
It was bounce backs and it was statements. To start with North Hollywood putting up an insane number on Monroe. That was them, hey, non-league was non-league. None of that matters anymore at this point. They're looking to repeat and they're looking to dominate and be interesting for them when we look ahead. Then staying in the East Valley, that Verdugo-Chavez game, that one was the dogfight we were looking for. And for a moment, it really looked like neither team really knew how to take control. They both had some interesting moments. There were some questionable calls in terms of like when the play was blown dead, ending a couple of special teams touchdowns that could have been. And, Verdugo Hill showing its mettle, pulling out the dogfight. This is something we've, been looking for from Jackson squads, in previous years. They've kind of seemed to wilt in that moment of that pressure and that dogfight. We know Chavez has always brought a dogfight to him. So this was good to see from them. For Chavez, it's definitely something they can learn, they can clean up. They're going to be, kind of rolling right into another one, and we'll get into in the look aheads. The other ones, wasn't really sure Van Nuys' offense was going to get shut down the way they were. But hey, that's a testament to that Kennedy program, and we've been touting that program since we did previews. And they're really going to someone's going to have to shock them in that sense of what's going on. So there's that. And Panorama sticking out. Hey, that Canoga Park team, they're going to surprise some people. And Sylmar, I think, is going to be another one that really, really is going to we have to keep an eye on, because they're showing that they're not really going to ever roll over, especially, that Chatsworth game. That was something.
Yeah, it was it was a testament to what we have talked about with North Hollywood in that program. Yeah, it was a rough start to the year, but when you get in the league, that is the opportunity to really kind of hit the reset button and kind of get your bearings about what the rest of the season is going to look like. And if that's what the rest of the season is going to look like, with them having this sort of bevy of guys they can put the ball in their hands and just grind the game up. But something that's more I think should be more alarming to teams that are going to have to play against them is, they've had 375 on the ground, but Logan Grant also went 5 for 6 and had 132 in the air. Not that those are eye-popping numbers, but the idea, like I told you, watching them play against Granada, one of the things that kind of stood out immediately was like, whoa, there's the ability to play with a little bit of balance. They also have guys on the outside that they can actually throw the ball down the field. So yeah, when they're running and forcing you to bring 7-8 people into the box, now they're one-on-one on the outside. They actually have the ability to actually take the top off the defense too, as soon as you start to worry about having to stop that run game. That could spell trouble for anybody in the East Valley, and quite frankly, that could, depending on where they would fall in postseason, because this is absolutely, despite the record right now, this is absolutely a postseason team. And depending on where they fall in the postseason, they might run rough over some people offensively if they actually can be multi-dimensional with their offense. We know they're going to be tough on defense, but if they can do that, where they can put up 500 yards of offense and it's not all on the ground, that could spell some trouble. Kennedy, here's what I'll tell you about the Kennedy Van Nuys game, watching that game. One, this is how you know that this is a team that they just have it rolling on all cylinders. The eye test, if you look at Van Nuys versus looking at Kennedy, Van Nuys was the bigger team. They look, their O line and D line are huge. But the thing about Kennedy is because it feels like Diego Montes is operating that offense with his eyes closed. Like he never feels like he's in a hurry. He always knows where to go with the ball. So when the opportunities present themselves, as soon as you stop being sound, they're going to hurt you. They take advantage every time. That score line to me was not quite indicative. Van Nuys is better than being 30 points, getting beat by 30 points by Kennedy. But every time that Van Nuys made a mistake, Kennedy capitalized. Every time there was a lapse, Kennedy hit a big play on him. And it just kind of showed you in some respects for Van Nuys, maybe this is the kind of game that Coach Osorio needed to show his kids this is the level, right? Us just showing up because we have talent isn't going to get it done against a team that, quite frankly, especially where they sit in the rankings now, this is a team on the cusp of open. That's the difference between open teams and not open teams. Open teams that are capable of playing in the open division are teams that, boy, don't be sound on your back end of your defense. Watch what happens. Miss an assignment or miss a block and watch what happens. You're going to look up and all of a sudden, even though you don't feel like you're playing bad, you're down by 3 touchdowns on the scoreboard. It ain't a damn thing you can do about it. So I'll say that. But Kennedy sort of showed you the mettle and the levels that this thing is when it comes to where they've been, what they've been doing for the last few years. And then the last point is, as you touched on it with Sylmar, something a little special, something a little sneaky special about that 1-2 punch watching them play against Chatsworth, because Chatsworth looked a lot better in this game than they had looked in previous weeks, where you could kind of tell now maybe the new regime, they've had some time and these kids are sort of kind of buying into the system a little bit. The Chatsworth broke some big runs. They kind of looked like the ghost Isaiah Ramo was there the way that run game was cooking. But then you got to that fourth quarter and these two young men in Releo Reyes and Tim Tanner, the quarterback, man, they started popping runs and you saw explosiveness that was like, whoa, if you're not prepared, and that's what they have the ability to do when they get in the fourth quarter of tough games, that's the recipe for an upset. That's the recipe for, all right, here's how we can beat Kennedy. We might be able to keep Diego Montes on the sideline if we can just kind of grind the game up and keep 7, 8, 9, 10-yard runs and just keep moving the chains and churning the clock. So that's something to keep your eye on. Seeing them and putting eyes on that team, that's a legit 3-1 team. So we gotta have to watch out for them. But speaking of which, let's roll right into the question of the week. So for me, obviously seeing what Kennedy did to Van Nuys, I don't think there's a question right now. You see the sort of schedule they've played already. For them to be sitting at 4-1 in their bye week with the gauntlet they already had to run with those tough city tests, even going on the road playing a Southern Section team, and then opening the league before their bye with an undefeated Van Nuys, and now they're 4-1 coming off of a 30-point win. I think it's safe to say that that's the top team in the Valley Mission that we're all chasing. But now you look and you've got a Panorama team sitting there with 1 loss. You got Van Nuys now not undefeated anymore, but still a very, very respectable 4-1. And you've got Sylmar now sitting here at 3-1 after dropping their opener night and won 3 straight. I'll ask you what you've seen and your gut feeling. What's it telling you with these 3 teams? Who is the legitimate second team in the Valley Mission out of these 3? I mean, we're going to get to see it on the field because luckily we all know they got to play each other. But right now where we're sitting, kind of hitting the halfway mark, who's the second best team? Who's the team you would put behind Kennedy in that Valley Mission right now?
Well, I think a team that deserves to be in that conversation is also San Fernando at 4-1.
Yeah, you're right. See, I forgot. Everybody's playing so well. I even forgot San Fernando's 4-1. You're absolutely right. San Fernando also, with that 3-headed monster they have, also deserve to be in there. You're right. So let's throw that into the mix. We got 4 1-loss teams sitting there with Kennedy. So adding Kennedy in, you got 5 1-loss teams, but Kennedy obviously is the top is the top dog right now, back-to-back, league titles. But of those teams, who are you looking at as that second team?
Now, see, as the guy who could be argued as a San Fernando hater, um, I'm kind of looking at them. To me, it's them or it's like Panorama based on what they've done. Those are the two, and it's going to be a very, very interesting fight as they go through. Those are the two that are kind of going to have to put themselves together. And that's not a knock on Selmar or Van Nuys. They've played really well so far. And, I'm just going to tease ahead that it's going to be a very interesting matchup within the Valley Mission that's going to answer that question. But you put my feet to the fire. Based on what we've seen in the last couple of weeks, and even though I kind of went against them, at this point, I'm talking myself out of it. I'm going to go Panorama. I was going to do San Fernando, but they're going to have to do something this week for me to go San Fernando after.
These are teams that are already through the first half of this year have proven they're all quality teams. Like, they haven't ducked any challenges. Like I said, you can look at all of these teams' schedule, especially now you throw Van Nuys in the mix. Having now played Kennedy, Selmar just went on the road and played Chatsworth, and they always go and they go play city teams on the road to begin the year. Panorama's already played Elko. San Fernando went on the road to Alemany. So these are all programs that have not ducked smoke with anybody to start the year, and they all are sitting here with one loss. So you're talking about quality programs. And to be fair, you're also talking about a couple teams that have resumes to stand on. Like I said, you're right. I'm inclined to want to go Panorama because that's the only team in this crop we're talking about right now that is a defending city champ currently. You know what I mean? Like, this is a team that actually has some hardware coming into the year that they have that they're trying to defend. But when you look at Selmar, like I said, when I see explosive playmakers on that offense. When I look at Van Nuys, that, to be fair to them, they moved the ball on Kennedy. They just couldn't get out of their own way with mistakes. That they were moving the football. So they didn't look, the score might lead you to believe they were in that, but they were anything but. It was just Kennedy just took advantage of every opportunity there was in this game. And San Fernando, like I said, we throw the Alemany game out the window. That's really tough competition. And aside from that, man, they have made it look easy to start the year offensively against all these teams. Andrew Newchurch is a baller in that offense for them. So, man, it's tough. It's tough. I don't want to cop out and just say Panorama because I do like what I've seen out of Van Nuys. But, and like you said, we'll get into it. And when we're looking ahead to week 5, I'm almost inclined right now to say San Fernando just because I just like what I've seen in all phases with that team in the early portion. But there's still so much football to play. Thank goodness for us. It feels like Christmas to be able to say we've got so much more good football ahead of us, especially with this Valley Mission Gauntlet. But I will say San Fernando for now. But that could change coming out of week 5, and we're gonna get into that. Matter of fact, go ahead.
We jump in. I gotta jump in real quick. In prepping for that question, I looked a little deeper and I was slightly unhappy. And this is something we can chew on and we can dive into when we get to the mid-seasons, but I got to bring it up. We got to tell everybody, I think these city rankings are doing them dirty. It's early. Yes, they're going to move around. Games are going to change. But, we're looking at Van Nuys at 4-1. Okay, you could say technically 3-1 with the forfeit to make it 4. But that's not a number 40 team. I wouldn't. And then Panorama, 32. Selmar's number 33. San Fernando's on top of the bunch with their strength of schedule, number 28. That's a respectable number, totally. But I can't tell you where I would put them right now. We got to dig and dive a little more. But at the cursory look, and I was like, I'm not happy with those numbers.
Yeah, and you want to know what? And that's why when we get to postseason, it's always so interesting. And for our perspective, it always does feel like the Valley versus the rest of the city, because it does feel like there's a little more credence given to the other teams on the other side of the city. Because we do know, like when you're talking about the Marine League and some of those other leagues, yes, there's tough competition there. There are tough teams there. Depending year to year, things always fluctuate because that's just the nature of high school football. But sometimes when you look up and you realize, like, hey, I don't think you're taking into account the quality of what our programs are, and when we schedule, there should already be some weight for teams playing against us, let alone us playing against them. So you're right. I also do think that Van Nuys sitting that low in those Max Preps rankings are a little weird. But that's why we do the VSD Power List every week, where I give you our rankings of our teams back here, because we show our teams a lot more reverence and respect than maybe the rest of the city does. So that's why we do what we do. So, but let's look ahead to week 5. We have a little lighter of a slate. We had a bunch of teams on buys. Kennedy is on their buy. A lot of the West Valley is actually on their buy this week. Kennedy at 4-1, Elko, Chatsworth, Taft, they're all on their buys. Granada. So the slate is a little bit light, but we still have games around the Valley to look forward to. Starting on Thursday, we got San Fernando at Van Nuys. That's has game of the week written all over it there. Canoga Park at 3-2. They get another big test. Following that Panorama game, they go on the road to this Selmar team, this 3-1 Selmar team. Panorama also hosts Reseda. And then on Friday, we've got Chavez at Arleta in the East Valley, Fulton at Monroe. Monroe looking to bounce back from that loss at North Hollywood. There should be some angry folks there. North Hollywood on the road at Verdugo Hills. That's another game that worth talking about. Crenshaw coming on the road, a big city matchup with number 19 Crenshaw at 3-1, coming on the road to face number 14 Cleveland, coming off of their bye, looking to get things righted before they head into the West Valley. You got Grant on the road at Poly looking to win 2 in a row and kind of get things rolling there. And then on Saturday, our Birmingham Patriots go on the road to Harvard Westlake. Another interesting matchup we're kind of going to dive into with predictions. And that's the slate for week 5. So with everything on the slate for week 5, give me, if I had to hold your feet to the fire, one game you're looking to the most. Which of those games are you looking forward to seeing?
At San Fernando Van Nuys. There's a whole bunch I can go through, that NoHo Verdugo game is always something that I look forward to every year. There's so many others, but put my feet to the fire is San Fernando Van Nuys.
Yeah, I'm inclined to go that way too. I am intrigued by this Canoga Selmar game only because Selmar coming off of a big win against Chatsworth. This feels like it could be a little bit of a trap game because this Canoga Park team is 3-2 for a reason. If they take them lightly, they could find themselves on the losing end of the scoreboard. Millie, like you said, that NoHo Verdugo game has got some juice. Verdugo's going to probably need a big effort after what we saw at North Hollywood last week. They're going to have to play well to win that game. That Crenshaw Cleveland game is important, not because it means something to Cleveland, obviously in the West Valley, but when you start talking about where you think Cleveland's going to be in the postseason, and in terms of D1, this is the kind of win that ensures, no matter what they do in the West Valley, would ensure a win over Crenshaw here would probably ensure they're hosting a first-round game in D1 if they win this game. Just because the weight that playing in the West Valley already holds, they won't slide lower than like an 8 seed in D1 if you beat Crenshaw. Heck, you beat Crenshaw here, you might be hosting them when the postseason starts. And obviously Birmingham, that one's interesting just because we saw Cleveland play Harvard Westlake. This will be a good sort of temperature test for the rest of the West Valley. Now having had multiple teams play Harvard Westlake, if Harvard Westlake is sort of the case study, that might give us a little bit of a preview. But if I had to settle on one, I'm with you. San Fernando Van Nuys is really, really interesting because now Van Nuys gets an opportunity to sort of really state where they are. in the Valley Mission. Okay, we lost to Kennedy, but we won't be. I don't think they'll be the only team to lose to Kennedy in the Valley Mission. But San Fernando is a team that thinks that they can hang with Kennedy. Okay, this team just lost to Kennedy. What are you going to do against them? And you got to go on the road and do it. So there is a lot of intrigue there. And let's keep it right there. Let's go right into week 5 predictions. San Fernando versus Van Nuys. San Fernando on the road, taking on this Van Nuys team that's going to have something to prove. Who you think's winning in this one?
I'm going to stick with what I've said and not going to, flip and flop. I've said San Fernando's got to show me a little more. They've done amazing. They've shown a lot. This is the one. If I'm going to jump on that San Fernando, they're going to have to win. I'm picking Van Nuys.
Yeah,
and Birmingham, Harvard, Westlake. Cleveland played them close and they played them tight, even though they lost their quarterback really early. I think Birmingham puts it together.
For me, I'm looking at the fact that I know these are both 2 quality teams. I think Van Nuys is a little bigger on their offensive and defensive lines, and they gave San Fernando fits last year. I'm expecting more of the same. I think it's going to be close, but I think I've seen enough out of Van Nuys that I think that they probably still, even though they lost 40-10, I'm still at this moment, I do think that there's a chance that they could still be that second best team in the Valley Mission. Plus, playing at home, I think will give them a little bit extra. So I know this is probably contrary to what I said earlier about San Fernando being the second best team, but now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, I think I'm gonna lean Van Nuys, but it's gonna be really close. I think if San Fernando wins, I'm not surprised. This could be team that has the ball last in the fourth quarter wins this game, in my opinion. And because of that, I think I'm going to lean Van Nuys probably something like 28-24, 27-23, or something like that between these 2 teams. So I'll lean with Van Nuys there. Here's the question I have. Let's switch it up with Birmingham and Harvard Westlake. Okay, Harvard Westlake, Southern Section team versus the City Section team. They're supposed to win. Here's what I'll ask you. Like you said, like you laid out eloquently, this was a 21-0 game, but Cleveland lost their quarterback early in that game and still managed to keep it close. Does it say something about Birmingham? If Birmingham loses by more than 21 to Harvard Westlake, does it say something about Birmingham and what the West Valley might look like? Because that's why I think that them playing this team right now, right before West Valley, is really interesting, because we've seen this team already play a West Valley team, and it was, like I told you, I watched that game. I watched every snap of that game. That game was a lot closer to me than 21-0. If Harvard Westlake paced Birmingham by 4 touchdowns or more, does that mean that the West Valley is more in play than we might think it is?
It could. It very well could. Now, we always talk about week 0 being week 0, right? And all the other good stuff that come with it. But you can't take away the fact that a Cleveland team that lost its quarterback played very, very tough. So it really does tell me, yeah, if Birmingham is not there, I pick them to win, right? If they don't play to a level that shows that they are the cream of the crop, then I'm very worried. I am, because Taft has that offense. Cleveland has shown that they're going to pull you into a dogfight, and they are not going to let go. Granada is bringing that ground game again and again and again. El Camino has scheduled very tough, and they have shown that they will fight you tooth and nail. Chatsworth has started to kind of put some things together. So Birmingham has to. make a statement in this game. This is what it is right now. They need to come out and they need to plant their flag and be like, this is the Southern Section team. Cleveland hang tough. We did more. That's what they got to do.
And I'll also say this. Say this is in honor of our partner Kaylee, who's of the three of us usually the one that she's brutal in her with her honesty. And I'll play the role of Kaylee here and give you a little bit of Birmingham brutal honesty. Kevin Hawkins has got to play better. He's got to play better. He's got to show up. And it starts this week for the rest of the year. If Birmingham's going to win a city title, if they're going to be the number one team in the city, if they're going to win open and then challenge for a state, he has got to perform better throwing the football for that offense. It is not enough anymore. And they weren't that way, obviously, with some of the previous iterations of quarterback that they've had. But it is not enough to just run the football when you're talking about the best teams in the city. Like, teams will learn how to defend that. And as soon as you start running into teams with a little offensive firepower, things get real spooky. He got completely outperformed by Dominic Hardy last week in Calabasas. And yes, I know that young man is, I know him personally. I know how talented he is. I know how it's easy when your brother's 6'4" and you're just tossing it up to him every play on the outside. Yeah, I get that. But I think he completed one pass in that game. That you need Birmingham. The program itself needs more than that, because the kid they have playing running back for them is really good. He's dynamic. But if a good defense can just put 8 in the box to stop you, your offense is not going to go anywhere. Like, you have to be able to back off teams from just loading the box to stop what you do well. So I need to see something from him this weekend at Harvard Westlake. I need to see him be in command of that offense. I need to see him actually being able to kind of alleviate pressure from the guys in his backfield. So that's what I'm looking forward to. That's what I'm looking forward to seeing. But yes, I will get on this podcast next week if they get completely blown out and tell everybody that the West Valley is wide open, whether that's true or not. Stats would say no, but my eye test is telling me we could have some interesting things going on in the second half of the year. So before we get out of here, I know you wanted to touch on Girls Flag. We have been following. We have been paying attention. We've got some good things going on in the Valley. I know you wanted to speak a little bit on that, on the flag scene. What you got?
Yeah, coming into the middle of the season, and like you said, we've been keeping an eye. Maybe we didn't talk about it the first couple of weeks, but it doesn't mean we weren't watching. And we mentioned last week there's a couple girls that are on national leaderboards, and it is amazing to see. But I'm going to bring that now. I'm going to bring it down to a city focus, right? Because we're coming up on midseason. So we'll start rankings and work our way up. Number 12 in the city currently is Cleveland. They're at 6-3. Their 3 losses have all come to Southern Section schools. And so those are things you look at and you go, okay, that is definitely something to hang your hat on. Definitely a good thing to build on as they get into their second half. And number 11 is Verdugo Hills. They're 7-2. Both of their losses came to teams in the top 5 of the city section. They lost to number 1 San Pedro and they lost to number 5 Marshall. Right. And this is a team that they make their way into that D1 bracket. They can make a lot of noise, and it's exciting to see. And the number 3 team in the city, this is the team we've kind of touted the last few weeks. They just keep making it impossible for us to ignore. Panorama, they're 16-0. They have a key win over Narbonne. Their defense is averaging 3 points a game against. And they've pulled out some really close games. I'm talking 1 score, 1 point, 3 point. And that's the sign of a team that is poised to make a really deep run and challenge for a title.
Absolutely, man. And like I said, we are paying attention. we are looking forward to postseason. When we get to postseason, because the postseason brackets will kind of run parallel when the postseason begins, we will do a full breakdown on the flag bracket as well. And like I said, shout out to our young ladies here in our backyard, especially over there at Panorama, who are just killing right now. We're watching, we're supporting. We love to see the growth of this sport and how exponential it's been across the country, but especially here in our backyard. It just kind of goes to show you we were 5 years too late getting to this point with our young ladies and creating this platform for them. So we will continue to watch. We will continue to speak on the success of our young ladies there, as we are going to continue to speak on everything that's going on in the Valley. Like I said, make sure you're tuning in to us here at the Valley Sports Telegram. We're growing by the day. We're out here. We're telling these stories. Like I said, go to valleysportstelegram.com. You'll see our Valley Gems. Make sure you go and check out the volleyball and the football power list. The next editions will be coming out this week. Will be coming out tomorrow. As we head into this weekend's schedule of games, we're going to have a volleyball dedicated episode of ATV this week as well. We're going to get you caught up to date with everything going on the volleyball scene. There's been a lot. We've got a lot of good teams, and not just from our big leagues, from our smaller leagues here in the Valley too, as well, with teams like Triumph and Sun Valley Magnet also doing really well at volleyball. So we're going to talk about all of that. So stay tuned for that. That will be coming this week as well. And going forward, just make sure you keep tapping in with us here on the YouTube. Like, subscribe, leave a comment. Make sure you're telling people about us. Make sure you're telling everybody. Tell your mama, tell your daddy, tell everybody, tell your grandparents. Make sure everybody's following what we're doing, because we are talking up our kids like nobody else is. Make sure you follow our Instagram. We got good stuff there. Make sure you check out everything we're covering. We got all sorts of goodies there. And make sure you're following us on all our social media platforms. Follow us on Threads. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us everywhere. We are telling these stories. So as we move forward, we're going to have more stuff coming for you. But like I said, always, thank you guys for supporting us. It means a lot to us, because what we do means a lot to us, and we know the people who follow. So that's going to wrap it up for this week's episode of ATV on the football scene. For Arshavir Sarian and myself, Kenny Hodges, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Peace.